Sawabona family, welcome back to the classroom. Summer school is in session and we are excited to be back. I'm here. Who am I? You know who I am. It's your boy, Anthony Robinson. It's your boy, Anthony Robinson, your Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Innovative Learning, here with my lovely host, Dr. Tracie Noriega. And this is the often imitated, never duplicated, critically conscious classroom. Dr. Noriega, what's popping?
What's poppin'? It's extended school year, like you said, and happy to be here. Many of us just came back from our annual board retreat. Dr. Rini Rickard is now our president of State ACSA, and we're looking forward to a year, and our theme is belonging. So something we definitely want to unpack, right, with our guests moving forward. But I'm just glad to have Dr. Christopher Nellum in the house today. So I had the pleasure, right, Dr. Nellum, of being on a panel with you. Um, Goldman Sachs, UC Berkeley, some policy students, grad students. We were on a panel together and we were talking educational policy. And I loved your stances, the work that you're doing. And I thought we really need to have you on the classroom so that you can share with the world what EdTrust-West, what you and EdTrust-West have been up to. And maybe that's our first question. So for the world,
Wait,
right?
Tracie,
Oh,
you
wait.
already know what time it is. Before we hop into that, let me just say this really quick. Dr. Nellum, I had the pleasure of hearing you speak at the 2026 CASA conference in Southern California. And so one of the things that you said, and Tracie, we'll get to the question, but we got to break the ice real quick. But
Okay.
one of the things that you were talking about that I really appreciated, you were talking about your mother and your grandparents and their work to help to break the color barriers at Louisiana State in New Orleans, right? Like I remember that. That really resonated with me. So I have kind of the first question before Tracie asked the real question.
Okay.
This is a serious question. So let me ask you this. Jambalaya or gumbo?
Oh my God. Gumbo. And it's got to be brown roux. It can't be red. We don't do red roux.
Yeah.
We also don't do chicken. I'm gonna get beat up, but we don't do chicken in our gumbo. So gumbo. Yes.
Gumbo.
Seafood gumbo.
Yes. No disrespect to anybody else, but it's always gumbo. Dr. Noriega, my apologies. I had to.
No, that's all good. I mean, the universal language is food, right?
It is.
I'm getting a little hungry.
It is.
So I appreciate that. And I think that's a tip for me. So I guess the next time I go and order seafood gumbo, I've got to ask what the roux is.
Yes.
I don't know, but I don't want to offend the chef at wherever I'm at. Okay. So what I was going to ask you is just to tell us a little bit about EdTrust-West. What is the organization? I know you all have been around for about 25 years, but if for folks that don't know, can you just give us a little introduction to EdTrust-West?
Yeah. Well, first I want to say thanks for having me. I'm happy and excited to enter the classroom with both of you. So just thank you so much. At Trust West, so yeah, we're in our 25th year, and we're an advocacy organization. We were founded because the folks who started the organization were frustrated that people walk in the halls of Congress. So Ed Trust started in DC and then came to California a couple years later, 25 years ago. They were frustrated that there were people who were advocating for white kids and wealthy kids full time, all the time. Their voices were loud and clear, and nobody or very few people were in the halls of Congress or in Sacramento advocating for Black, Brown, Native, Asian Pacific Islander, and multilingual learner students. And so that is our mission. It will stay our mission. We say that loudly and proudly. And our goal is to change education systems in this state to be fairer. That's like this, I think, the simplest way to put it. We know the data is clear that systems in this state aren't yet living up to their promise. And so that's what EdTrust-West is trying to do in a whole bunch of ways, in our research, our advocacy, our technical assistance. But that's who we are, in short, an advocacy organization trying to make the education system fairer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know that as a, former school administrator, like I always went to EdTrust-West in terms of ACSA and EdTrust-West, my two go-tos in terms of research and especially policy, right? What are the recommendations? You've done a great job of synthesizing the research out there and then turning that into what should be policy, right? I think that's always been the tough part for many of us as school leaders, right? We're in systems that weren't made for folks that look like us.
Yeah.
But then we're also part of perpetuating some of these practices and policies. It's rough. It's rough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just want to piggyback a little bit because you've talked about 25 years, right? And why, and why the organization was created. So what are some
Yeah.
policies that EdTrust-West has championed over the years and we are now benefiting or feeling the impact of?
I appreciate that question, Dr. Noriega. What I'm struggling. I can certainly name policies, and I'm wrestling with this other thing that, if you want to redirect me, please do. But like, I can name policies. The local control funding formula was one of the things that we led on. Student-centered, student need-based funding. We did the same in higher ed. There's a AB 469, financial aid application completion. We led the creation of the state data system that now exists, the Cradle to Creator data system, the Golden State Teacher Grant Program. A through G for All has been a big push for ours over the years. And I think the thing I'm struggling with is I don't know if I want people to know the impact of our work by those things. I don't know that I want them to know EdTrust-West ran a bill or the bill number even. 'Cause for me, I don't know. Good policy, like actual good policy, I don't know. Shouldn't it be invisible to the people that it's actually intended to help? Like it's actually helping in a way that is supportive and is just there because we're doing the right things, we're well intentioned. Um, and one of the things I think about when I was very fortunate to go away to college and I went to UC Santa Barbara. I was a Pell Grant recipient, Cal Grant recipient, thankfully. And I had the chance to go to summer school every summer because I had a Pell Grant and a Cal Grant. I didn't know why at the time. I just knew I wasn't taking 16 units every quarter. I knew I wasn't doing that. And I knew I wanted to graduate in 4 years. My mom was very clear, like, you got to get out of there in 4 years. I just knew the door was open for me to do that. I didn't realize until all these years later that that was because of a policy. Like someone made it a policy that Cal Grant students could go to summer school for free. It helped me stay on track. I didn't have to overload myself with classes. And I don't know. So I experienced the system. I knew it could be better, but there were things in place that came from policy that helped me. And isn't that what we should be? I don't know. I just think that's what we should be doing. So I don't know. We could certainly talk about the bills. And my hope is that we're doing things that are helping people that they may not even feel because that means the system is doing better. So that's what's on my mind these days. That's probably not a great answer, but that's what's on my
No,
mind.
it actually makes a lot of sense, right? Like we don't necessarily go back to why things are the way they are, right? We can definitely go through the history of education and how things came to be, right?
Yeah.
Thomas Jefferson model, et cetera, et cetera. So, but I will say that what you all are doing is really, really important work. And personally, as a from teacher to assistant superintendent, like I really through the years, definitely got to appreciate policy a lot more
Mm.
because a lot of times we want it to be grassroots and we want it to come up that way, right? But a lot of times it's got to come from the treetops, right? It's got to come both ways or all ways to
Right.
affect the system in order to make it fair for all.
Right.
So it's a tension. I think this is where we also live is in this tension. And I really heard a lot about just the humility of the work that you all are trying to do. Right. And I think maybe that's another,
Mm.
folks of color thing, right? We're just doing the work. Like we're not trying to, I don't know, maybe we should give ourselves awards, but for us, it's just work.
Yeah. I want the system to be better than it was for me. And so for me, the best policy isn't about a bill number. Like, isn't it about possibility? Like an opportunity. Like that's what we're trying to do. And I don't know. I tell the team maybe we were often too humble, but we've done I think a lot of good work. We've made some mistakes too. But I think we've done some really good work that I think importantly is not ed reformy. And I want to be clear, like we're not trying to be ed reformers, meaning we're not trying to do top-down policy work. For me, if folks of color, if the people in our communities can identify with the work we're doing, if we haven't heard from community like y'all should care about the Golden State Teacher Grant Program because we've heard this from teachers of color, that's not a good bill for me. And so it's just something that's been on our minds is that it doesn't have to be top down. We want to be a conduit. That's what we want to be.
I love the humility personally, right? Because I think sometimes, we have these conversations, not particularly on the show, but we'll have the conversations and it's about me, right? And what happens is we get lost in people wanting to celebrate their personal accolades or what the organization did over the course of an amount of time that the work is actually forgotten. The people are forgotten. Why the work is happening is forgotten.
Yeah.
I particularly love that you said that policy should be invisible. It should be, right? It should just be happening by virtue of the fact that humans deserve good things to happen, right? People deserve for great things to happen to them. And yeah, we celebrate, policy, especially when it's good policy. We celebrate great policy, but we don't need to run in and tell that all the time, right? So I really appreciate you sharing that because the work is speaking for itself. But I wanted to ask you, Dr. Nellum, so EdTrust-West's theory of change includes changing policy, changing narratives, and changing practice.
Mm.
Can you explain the theory of change and how our viewers can get involved?
Yeah. And so we've been talking about, is this a theory? Is it a theory of change or is it a theory of action or is it an action framework? I'm not sure. Um, what our theory of change is trying to do is think about like how does change happen, right? Like I don't think we have any questions about whether or not change is necessary. I feel like every data point tells us that the system is not serving Black kids well, Pacific Islanders well, Natives well. Like it's not. So we know that change needs to happen. And what I think our theory of change is really about is a recognition that change rarely happens through one lever. Like it has to happen, good policy has to happen through multiple levers. So the change policy part of our agenda, our theory of change is thinking about how, to Dr. Noriega's point, like how can policies create conditions so that people can do good work? And so we think of policy as like condition enablers, condition supporter. I think the other thing is we try to change narratives, and I'll give an example in a second. Narratives we think are important because you can change a policy, and maybe you haven't changed folks' hearts and minds. You haven't changed their opinions about why the change needed to happen. And then practice, to all of your members and educators across the state, practice is where the rubber meets the road. It actually, that is the thing that determines whether or not a young person experiences something better, something different. So for us, it's about all three. It's not about just doing one. We don't celebrate when the signature on the bill is exciting, but it doesn't matter if it doesn't actually get implemented. And so that's sort of what our theory of change is trying to get at. And we try to do them all well. We do some of them better than worse, but that is what we're trying to get at, the way that change actually happens.
Yeah, that practice is so important, right?
Mhm.
Um, and it's always, well, is it which comes first? Changing hearts and minds, changing policies that then hopefully change practice. Um, yeah, I think about, I think about so many things. But I also think, I think one of our questions is going to be about this intensified backlash against diversity, equity, inclusion, right? And we're talking about changing hearts and minds. And so if you've never experienced any kind of hardship or discrimination, right? If you've never and never will be able to empathize with your students or your, your next door neighbors or your, fellow teachers, fellow, school leaders, then what happens, right? Then what happens? Or so, again, over the I know our question says over the past year. I think it's been longer than that, right?
Feels like 10.
feels
Yeah.
like feels like forever. But we've seen, this intensified national backlash against DI, right, diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives. I gotta spell it out in honor of Dr. Travis Bristol. He was like, no,
Mhm.
say
Say
it
it.
all through. Diversity, equity, inclusion, right? These initiatives, in education and beyond. So, just from your perspective, and very much probably aligned with the why your organization was formed, but what are your thoughts about these attacks and what they reveal about the current and political moment here in America?
A
I,
lot. A lot. Um, I think it reveals a lot, and then it also has me concerned about, I think, a number of things. I think what it reveals, though, and I actually don't empathize with the folks on the other side. I want to be clear about that. But I am trying to understand, like, what is producing this backlash? Like, where's it coming from? Why now? Not again, not because we need to excuse it, because I think we need to understand it so that we can continue to do our good work. And I think what it tells me about this moment and about education is that fear is a powerful tool. It's a very I think fear of change, fear of demographic shifts, fear of whose stories get told, fear of who belongs. And so I think that's what I'm sort of taking from this moment is fear without understanding is super, super powerful and dangerous. And the concerns I have, there are a couple. One is students, young people are paying for adults' anxieties right now. They're paying for all this fear that these adults are running around with. Students are now questioning whether or not they belong because they're getting questioned intensely about skin color, uh, uh, what language they speak. LGBTQIA, especially trans kids right now, are questioning their own safety in schools. People's histories are being removed from textbooks. And the thing that I'm really concerned about is, of course, like, yes, I have given the work I do, and I just care about young people's learning. Like, are they having a good academic experience? But I think the other thing that I don't think we're prepared for is the invisible psychological cost that it's costing these young people. They're questioning their identities.
yeah.
They're questioning whether or not they belong. That's one thing that's concerning. The other is leadership. I think we're sending a lot of messages right now to young people about how we show up in these moments of fear and anxiety. Like so many people are retracting, so many people are recoiling, and I think that's sending messages. So that's what's on my mind. I think the last thing on my mind, which I don't know if I have an answer to it, but the concern I have, and this gets to the hearts and minds piece, is is terminology a hill that I want to die on? Like, I think people adopted the language of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they didn't adopt the values. Like, I
Mm.
think we let them co-opt the language. And I think we're seeing in this moment, they adopted it, and then the first chance they got, they abandoned the work. And so I'm just trying to think about in this moment, like, what does fear tell us about how people behave, and what do they say? And so that's what I think this moment's telling us a lot about how people show up and what is real and what's not. I don't know.
Dr. Nellum, that really sat with me. Everything that you just said
Mm.
sat with me. Particularly the fear and anxiety piece. Uh, and as you know, and I think we would all three agree that that's a strategy. This is all strategy. So building upon what you said, my question for you is one, as practitioners, as folks who care about not just people of color, but these students, these babies. Um, how can we be strategic to effectively fight through it, right? And effectively call folks back to that front line. Like you said, so many people have retreated, right? And we'll see them, we'll see them back on the front line in
Yeah.
about years when it's easy, right? But
Yep.
how do we call folks back in? And honestly, how do we call the babies back in? How do we get them to understand that this is strategic, that they matter, that they belong, all of those various things?
I think we have to I don't know if I have a good answer,
Yeah.
except I think we have to pay attention to what people do, not only what they say. And I think that tells us a lot. And so that's one thing. 'Cause I think I also think a lot of people have some real people who I think we might all agree with. There's some real fears that we all share
Mhm.
Right.
about job security and physical safety and all sorts of things. And so I don't want to minimize anyone's sort of fears or anxieties on in those ways. Um, so yeah, I think as far as I can get is like we got to pay attention to what people do. And on the other question, I think the young people know. I
Mm.
think they know that this isn't right. I think they get and see that it's a strategy. I think where we can be useful to them is to try to connect them with sort of the nuances of like how things work or how things don't work so that when they I think a lot of them want to go around the way things are supposed to be and I think that's a good thing and I think we should be supporting them trying to take alternative paths to changing this because I think they get it. I think.
Yeah.
I think they do. I mean,
Mhm.
these students, these future leaders, they're the ones that want to have these conversations, right? I'm thinking about like a number of like instances across the state, all of these attacks on ethnic studies. Thank you to EdTrust-West, by the way, for for your report on the impact of ethnic studies. I'm wearing my t-shirt from Berkeley Unified
Yeah.
because they've been doing some really great work, right? And the first line or the first um, layer, if you will, in ethnic studies is learning about the self,
Yeah.
right? Identity. So when you say identities are getting questioned, right? That we're it's true. It's a strategy. When you doubt yourself, you don't know you don't know which way to go. You're stuck in in fight or flight mode, right?
Mhm.
You don't have that, ability to be rational and and
Mhm.
and make some good choices. So then you're
Mhm.
stuck, right? Um, and but we have some other educators out there that are creating some amazing conditions for students to have these conversations at the risk of their careers, at the risk of public records, requests and complaints and potential lawsuits and all of that because they're doing right by these babies who have these critical thinking skills, that have this critical consciousness, and then they want to do something about it. So I think, I mean, I remain hopeful that the work that we are doing, the impact that we're making, is definitely coming through. And I feel like part of our work too is protection in a way, right?
Mhm.
Like I this show brings me a lot of joy, and for the folks that have been listening, have been watching, the testimonials that we've received are just part of that big bucket of joy because it inspires them, right?
Mhm.
So all of the work that you all have been doing at EdTrust-West is part of that joy that people are able to have, part of that hope
Mhm.
that folks have, right? And it gets to what you said in terms of changing the narratives, right? There's some people out there, they're doing some really good work. I want to be a part of that, right? So how do I do that? And here's an opportunity to tap in.
Yep.
So, Dr. Nella, I want to add another layer to it because Dr. Noriega said something that really resonated with me personally. She talked about being stuck. Um, and I bring this up because many of our viewers are not just educators, we're parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles,
Mhm.
mentors, whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
So I'm a father myself of two teenagers, and
Mhm.
I'm thinking particularly about my daughter, and I know she'll see this because I'm going to make her
Mhm.
watch it. But one of the things that she shared with me as the school year was closing is that she doesn't feel comfortable at school sharing certain things that are happening, things that she's seeing.
Mhm.
Um, and as a freshman, she had the great fortune of going through an ethnic studies course, but it was only 8 weeks. So she's like, I don't get another at bat, if you will, while I'm in high
Mhm.
school. So
Yeah.
my question for you, Dr. Nellum, and Dr. Noriega, feel free to chime in on the home front at home with our kids, our neighbors, our grandchildren, our nieces, nephews. How can we instill these things to give our students confidence to know that, hey, whatever you feel comfortable sharing at home, whoever you feel comfortable being at home, you can be that at school, at the mall, in the world.
Hmm.
Oh, that
I
was heavy.
Yeah, I have a hard time talking about my kids and not crying. I always cry.
Mm.
Um, I think the thing that's coming to my um, I think a lot of it starts at home. Not all of it, but a lot of it starts at home. And one of the things I thought about from the earlier question about like what does this moment tell us? For me, I was my grandfather turns 85 on Saturday, and
Mm.
this moment I don't like it. I hate it. It's not a surprise to me. Like they always told me that they always told me the truth. They always told me that this was the sort of dark underbelly of this country. And so I think one of the things we can do is tell our kids the truth. Like they can handle it. They can like to tell them the truth, to help them understand sort of why are these things happening, that they play a role. They are part of a much longer arc, particularly, for kids of color. They're a part of a long arc of struggle and triumph. So I think it's giving them sort of the background so they know that that no one can confuse them about what is real and what is not. And so that is what comes to mind for me. It's just being honest
Mhm.
with young. My daughter is 5 years old and came home from preschool and asked me if the president of the United States was a good or bad person. And we had to have that conversation at 5. And we gave her the best answer we could that a 5-year-old could,
Mm.
could engage with. And she walked away saying, no, if a person isn't kind, and doesn't take the responsibility they have seriously, then that makes them a bad person. And that was enough for us. Like she knew the truth. We didn't have to sugarcoat it. So that's where I would start is just telling the truth. And they can handle it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. The benefit of having adult children, a grandson, right? About the impact of the work that I've been doing through the years, and I would love for her to not have any issues, especially with questioning herself, right, and who she is. I want her to be able to not doubt herself in any way, and be able to walk through wherever, whether it's the hallways of school or you know the mall. I mean, I think malls are opening back up, right? But, all of the things, like all of the places where she dares to go and not feel like he has to fear for her safety in any kind of way, right? Um, so for my husband and I and for our kids, it has always been about, yes, absolutely the truth, being secure with yourself. And part of living in the Bay Area is, it was a conscious choice. I grew up in Sacramento in a non-diverse area. Many folks know my story. Um, so after college, after Sac State, it was like, well, no, we're moving to the Bay Area because my husband grew up very differently, right? And my kids have had this huge opportunity, privilege to live in extremely, diverse in all kinds of ways community. And never once have they doubted who they are as Filipino Americans, right? They claim it as such. And they have so many, other kinds of friends. And so I want that for my daughter, but doesn't mean that we haven't had the conversations about how to navigate through college spaces, right?
Mhm.
My oldest went to San Francisco State, not very different. My second oldest went to University of Hawaii Manoa. Uh, she chose Hawaii because she was a wrestler and was, and wanted diversity. So competing nationally sometimes, right? You didn't get that, right? My youngest daughter wanted to go to state in New York City, and her school was on the Upper East Side. That was culturally interesting, right? And then, I got the young one who, finished at San Diego State. Extremely diverse in lots of ways, right? But also being his career being in basketball, ergo the basketball's in the back.
Okay. Yeah. Hmm.
But they have the tools, right? They had the tools because we were very honest about what they were going to encounter. And we were very honest in terms of giving them advice about who they needed to be, and be very conscious about who you are when you are around particular people, and know, right? If you've got a code switch, know why you're doing it, right? And know what that might do to you if you have to do it,
Hmm.
right? Know what it does to you and your heart, right? If you think that you have to bury yourself for what, for whatever reason. Um, and I think that they've made some really, really good and brave choices, but that's always been the conversation. But you know what? That's because I came from ethnic studies and I wasn't going to not tell them how to life, right? How to do life, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Nellum, I want to keep it on the students, so I'll get back to the official questions. Not
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
so, as you know, as you both know, in education, we always are, or we're often using the phrase "all students," right? All students matter. All students, right?
Mm.
But your organization intentionally centers students of color, multilingual learners, and students experiencing poverty. Why is it important to name those groups explicitly rather than relying on race neutral language?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it comes back to in some parts where we just were truth and honesty, but I also think it's about visibility, um, and precision, like being clear about who we're talking about. I don't know how we can claim to care about all students and then refuse to look honestly about who we're not serving well. I just don't
Mm.
understand it. It's actually in the DNA of this organization. You know, we're fighting in the legislature right now to amend the state constitution, amend Prop 209, so that a bill ACA 7 can get through the legislature. And because it's about, we think that the state should be able to use evidence-based targeted practices in education because it's important to follow the data. The data will tell us where to focus. The data will tell us who we're serving well. The data will tell us who we're not serving well. Um, and so for us, it's about following the data and being honest. And the data tell us that we have to be clear about who's not being served. And those are students of color, multilingual learners, and low income students. But I also think with my sort of researcher brain on, it's about you can't be held accountable for things you refuse to measure. You got to talk about who you're actually talking about. You can't close gaps you're trying to refuse to see. Like these folks are trying to colorblind their way out of this, and we can't.
Mm.
Like we're not gonna. It's not going to work in the way that I think they hope. And one of the things that I've been talking about with the folks who are working on ACA 7 with is in so many other industries, and I'm not suggesting that education is a business in the way that like a corporation is, except being what we call equity minded in our space is rewarded in corporate America. They go to a board meeting and they say, what are we doing well and where is the business not functioning? Where is the business not operating at scale or well?
Mm.
And the directive is fix it. That's all being equity minded is being precise about who we're not serving well. Like we really struggle as an organization that sort of precision is not seen as a strength because it's not
Mhm.
about excluding. Um, it's not about trying to make white kids have less. It's about making sure that black and brown kids have something too. Like they got to have it too if we're actually going to do this work well. And so that's why we name it. The other reason, just to be super, super, super clear, is black student outcomes are often a bellwether for what is happening. Like if you're not serving black kids well, you're probably not serving a whole bunch of other kids well. And if you can serve black kids well, it actually will help improve the system for everybody. And so that's why we name the groups. We think that's true in other spaces too. And the last thing I'll say is we didn't get here on accident. We
Mhm.
got here on by intention. Even in California, people try to say California is the sort of, golden state on the hill, but we have policies of exclusion. Like we kept Japanese kids out of school. We kept black kids out of school in law. We made choices. And so I think we have to use intention to get ourselves out of this. And for us, we got to be clear about who we're talking about. So that's why we do it. We're going to do it until someone makes us not do it. Because I can't wake up and colorblind my way out of doing work that we know needs to get done. I just can't. And the team can't.
I feel like that work that you're doing is this intentional work, right, of naming it, is obviously it's you is is one of the reasons why there's such huge attacks, right, on diversity, equity, inclusion work, on particular organizations like, that that are intentional about language and such, right? Because it goes back to what you said in terms of the fear, right? So, when we were just talking about like how it all starts at home and what are the values, right, that are talked about. um and obviously in different households, depending, right, the conversations could be different. Um but, what's my question? My question is, how do we change, like, again, going back to how do we change hearts and minds, right? Because if it starts in the home, how do we change hearts and minds? I know Dr. Nellum at EdTrust-West has also done some work with parents. Like, can you talk a little bit about like what you've encountered with specific work with parents on that front?
Yeah, so we try. I don't want to. We try really hard to work with organizations that work with parents. That's sort of how we try to do our work because we're not, unfortunately, not a parent organizing group. But one of the things we hear a lot about is, despite what people say and the sort of the broad narrative, is black and brown parents care a lot about education, a lot. We have people who move zip codes and use other people's addresses because they care so deeply about their kids getting a good education. So that to me is the thing that comes through loud and clear is that our people care and they care deeply. They always have cared. And so that gives us the sort of fuel we need to do the work that we need to do uh, to weather the storm. And we have weathered them over the last 5 years. Because if they can show up and do what they need to do for their kids, I feel like we can show up and do what we need to do from the, I think, privileged place that we sit in at this organization. So one of the things is that we have heard parents care deeply. I think there are other folks who would suggest that parents don't understand what is happening. And I struggle with that because they may not use the sort of wonky policy language, but they can certainly tell you if their baby came home with heat stroke because the school didn't have air conditioning. They can tell you if their kid has to leave their book at school because the school doesn't have enough textbooks. Those are all relevant and real policy issues they're really kitchen table issues that parents talk about. And so those are the two big things. Parents care deeply and they understand a whole hell of a lot more than I think some of the folks, even in Sacramento, give parents credit for.
I like that. Kitchen table issues.
It's not mine. I've heard it somewhere. But it's real. Like these folks,
Yeah.
folks in the legislature want to behave, not to pick on the folks in the legislature and other places want to behave like they are talking about issues that are so far removed from what they become these policy debates. And these aren't debates. They're real issues that people deal with every single day. And parents know that. Kids know it. Parents know it too. Yeah.
Yeah, you talked about moving, like that really took me back. So I'll tell you,
Mhm.
my mom moved us to we had to move 5 minutes away for me to go from one district to another just to get a better education. She literally had to uproot me from all of my friends, all of the people I knew my whole life just to get a better education. So um I didn't understand it at the time, but it benefited me well. And to
Right.
your point about those kitchen table conversations, right? Those that's what we really should be focusing on. And I
Hmm.
think that what you were saying is the debates and all the jargon and all that's just another means, another strategy to create obstacles, right? And to close
Mhm.
things out, right? There's so much power in the language, right? And so
Mhm.
think about multilingual learners, or if we think about even blacks in America, right? The English language was used and has continued to be used as we see different words now having different definitions. And now a word that meant something 5 years ago means something totally different. And I'm not talking about slang, I'm talking about different words being put in place to shut,
Hmm.
right? So yeah, I love that you said that because at the end of the day, when I think about parents and even when I think about the students, they're the real subject matter experts. They're the ones that are really living it, you know?
Exactly.
We're on the front lines fighting for them, but they're the ones who are really telling us what to do, at least in this work that we're doing. So thank you for that.
Yeah, the phrase civil rights now has a new definition.
Yeah.
What are we? What? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's part of the lawfare, right?
Oh,
That's part of the lawfare.
I haven't heard that lawfare. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, if you can't, well, yes, if you can't get it done, it goes both ways, right? Good policy, bad policy,
Sure.
right? If it's not gonna, it's not coming up, however way it comes up from grassroots to top down. But if some folks aren't getting their way, then they're gonna
Mm,
go and use the means a lot of times, right?
mm,
Use their means. So I think that's part of the art of war that
mm,
Dr. G. Reyes and Dr. Carrion and I talked about in one of our previous episodes.
mm.
Yeah, yeah. Ooh, well, I know all of this work, right, is takes a lot out of us as educators, right,
Mm,
as folks that are really working to create fair systems. Um, so, you know, we've spent years fighting for right inclusive schools, policies, and I think we said right, it feels like 10 years or longer
mhm.
um, in terms of these particular battles. But yeah, let's kind of go back to hope. Hope. What's the hope in the moment, right? So, Dr. Nellum, what gives you hope in this moment?
Yeah, I think a lot of things. I do want to say I understand folks' exhaustion. Like it's real. To your point, we all are. One of my femtors, she just retired and spent like 6 decades of her life doing work. And she was like, I thought these battles were over, and I'm just really disappointed and exhausted that even at my retirement, y'all are still having to fight this. So I think the exhaustion is real. But I don't know. It's gonna be a cheesy answer, but people give me hope. My nephew is in OUSD and um he's fallen in love and OUSD is supporting his love for astronomy and baseball at the same time. And that little boy runs around town practicing his baseball moves and also trying to look for planets in the sky. Like I think that gives me a lot of hope. I come from a family of educators. My cousin is a teacher in Detroit public schools and he teaches physics and robotics, an award-winning robotics team full of black kids. That gives me hope. They're excited about the future. And my kids go to a preschool here in Oakland that is mostly black and Latina, and they are teaching our kids all leave there knowing how to read and they know English and Spanish, and they all love each other. It's a very diverse place. That gives me hope. They're also compensated well, by the way. They are preschool teachers who are compensated well, which is important. Um, I don't know, curiosity, determination, their creativity, all of that gives me hope, and I see it every day in black and brown kids. That gives me hope. Um, so yeah, that gives me hope. And I also think black people, we have always found ways to find and create joy in the shittiest of circumstance. And so the thing that's on my mind, and I get that people are tired, and I don't know if hope is something I'm willing to wait for. Like, we just
Mhm.
got to go look for it and we got to go create it and see it where it is. It's here, even though there's a whole bunch of like crappy stuff happening too.
Yeah, that's not a cheesy answer.
I was like, well, what gives you hope? People, you know.
But that's the root of it, right? Like we're people. And but that's also the strategy,
Mm,
right? Is to dehumanize, right? We're humans or people. That's a strategy to dehumanize. So
yeah,
you strip away the hope, you strip away the joy,
yeah.
then, then it is doing its job. Um, so we definitely have to continue to inspire each other. I love I got this visual of, a little kid with a baseball bat looking up at the sky.
Mhm.
I
What's
love
giving
it.
you two hope? I know I'm not the question asker, but what's giving y'all hope?
Well, I'll say this before I answer your question. Isn't it crazy that the things that you said are just the simple things that we take for granted in life? Those are the those are the things that should give us hope. your
Mm.
nephew with the baseball looking sky. And I think that, again, going back to the strategy and going back to the fatigue and all the things that we are experiencing in this moment, I can at least speak for myself. I get so focused on what's happening around me and what I need to do, what strategies I need to enact, that I miss those simple things, right?
Mm.
I am in my office right now, and I'll tell you, it's no less than probably 95 degrees in here right now. But when I look outside, the sky is beautiful, right? So when
Mhm.
you ask the question, what gives me hope? Um, my children give me hope first and foremost, like, because they are the best part of me, and I see I feel like at least part of our future is in good hands.
Yeah.
Uh, I think the fact that, that I'm able to engage in conversations like this with you all, this gives me hope, right? Because it's real easy to tuck your tail. It would be easy for us to just go away and not do this show, not
Mhm.
engage in these conversations,
Mm.
not ask these thoughtful questions. So that gives me hope. Um, and I think just, really dialing things back, kind of what you were saying, Dr. Nellum, and really taking in the fact that, hey, I have the activity of my limbs. I woke up in my right mind this morning. I'm able to feed myself, right? But the things that we often don't think about, that's what gives me hope, right? Because there are a million and one things that I could complain about in this moment. I could purposefully search for everything that's bad, or as Dr. Noriega said, and as you said, Dr. Nellum, I can change my mindset and create that
Mhm.
hope, right?
Mm.
Create that joy. Because if I decide that I'm going to wait for someone else to give it to me, I'm not going to get it, right? So I think what gives me hope ultimately is the fact that I understand that I have the capacity to create hope and joy for myself, for my family, for my friends, for anyone that I'm around.
Yeah.
Dr. Noriega, what gives you
Well,
hope?
I talked a little bit about, my pieces of joy, definitely my family, right? My granddaughter who just turned 1, another one on the way. Um, those for sure. My children, my grandchildren give me hope. They give me lots of joy. But I'm gonna shout out the students from the Ethnic Studies Social Justice Academy at James Logan High School, and the scholars from the Social Justice Academy at San Leandro High School. We brought a few of them, 7 of them, down to our Summer Leadership Institute. These are, new assistant principals, new principals. There was some, more veteran folks in the crowd. I wasn't able to moderate their panel, but I was able to help them prepare, and some of them had already been on our panel at our ACSA Equity Institute. But just how passionate they are about this work, right? And and like you said, Dr. Nolan, they know, right? They absolutely know, and they are fearless, and they're off to college. Uh, Spelman, Clark, San Jose State, UC Berkeley, San Francisco State. They're going to all of these amazing places. They're gonna go diploma on their why, and then they're going to come back and hopefully into the education system or whatever the case might be, and do some amazing work. They definitely bring me hope and joy.
And that's what it's about. So, Dr. Nellum, I was raised in a non-denominational church with deep roots in the Baptist church, right? So,
Mm.
one of the things that I learned is that every great sermon has to have at least one good close. So, we're going to end this with the last question. So, we have a captive audience. We have folks who watch the show. And I want you to really put your imaginary thinking cap on this,
Mm.
on this question. So, outside of the folks who are going to see this, listen to this, experience this, If you could challenge policymakers, educators, and the public to rethink one thing about education in America right now, what would you want them to understand before it's too late?
Oh, I might have to try to do two things. The first, and I don't know if educators fall in this bucket. I'm maybe talking to policymakers and the public. Um, and we sort of touched on this, but I just think it's really important to say before it's too late, we have got to stop acting like education is a side hustle or that it's this like abstract policy thing. Like it's not. I know there are lots of social issues that matter because our social safety net is crumbling and education should be at the top of every. We cannot let people continue to behave as if education isn't one of the most important things in this country. One of the most important things. And I'll just say my frustration that I know there's lots of excitement about the gubernatorial race because it'll be historical. And those two candidates made it out of the June primary. Neither of them talked about education in a meaningful way, and they won the primary. I don't think they should be able to get to the governor's house and not have a meaningful conversation about education. I was just at a bill signing last week with Governor Newsom. He signed the largest education budget in the history of this state, maybe the country, and the reporters in the room asked maybe two questions about education. So one thing I think we all need to just figure out quickly is to how to get folks to understand that education is not a side hustle. It is a really important part of who we are. I knew that growing up in the Imperial Valley. You could see sort of how education was filtering people. Um, so anyway, that's one thing on my mind. The other, I don't know if this is the dream answer or dreamy answer, but I serve as a adjunct professor. Well, before I had kids, and I'm gonna get back to it soon. Uh, and I think this applies in K-12 also. Our kids will rise to the challenge. They will. And I think we have to stop behaving like our young people. Yes, our young people are dealing with a lot, but they also can meet and exceed every challenge that we put in front of them. We just have to give them all the things they require: food, housing, stability, safety, security, so that they can do the things we need them to do in the classroom as well. So those two things come to mind for me.
I don't even know what else to say after that. You dropped the mic. Education is not a side hustle.
Not
I don't even want to try to follow that. Like that's enough for us to just stop it there. Dr. Nellum, it has been a pleasure to
Thank
have
you.
you. So many great nuggets from you. Dr. Noriega, you already know you're always dropping something in my lap, in my spirit. So I appreciate you both. To you all watching, watch it again. That's I don't even have anything that watch it again. Listen to this on repeat. Um, Again, Dr. Nellum, thank you. Dr. Nellum, you can find Dr. Nellum on LinkedIn like I did. Connect with him. There's a lot of wisdom. Um, we got more episodes coming up. So pay attention to your YouTube, pay attention to the ACSA DEI website, pay attention to my LinkedIn because you already know I'm gonna be letting you know when it's happening. But we will catch you on the flip side. We love you as always. Thank you for tuning in. Peace.